Hello, Husker fans. Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Omaha.com with the post-practice video here on Wednesday. Well, we didn't expect to hear from Scott Frost today, and we sure as heck didn't expect to hear from Trev Alberts, but we heard from both. The Nebraska athletic director and the Nebraska head coach coming into Memorial Stadium in the north side here to talk about an NCAA investigation that is currently ongoing into the Husker football program related to Nebraska's use of analysts and potentially whether or not Nebraska was running some sort of unauthorized workout during the 2020 COVID pandemic summer, and the pandemic is still going on, but 2021 is a lot different than 2020, and they're trying to figure out if there was any sort of unauthorized workouts going on at the time. What we can tell you is that both Alberts and Frost said that they're complying with the NCAA investigation 100%. The two of them stood together. It was a somewhat notably different conversation than you might see with most ADs and coaches, but I think Trev wanted to be here today and kind of have that discussion. They are complying 100%. They did not offer too many comments beyond that. Alberts did concede that the investigation predated his arrival, and he found out about the investigation once he got here. Certainly it predated his arrival. The use of the analyst would be special teams analyst Jonathan Rutledge, according to a report from Action Network. Nebraska essentially confirmed that today. Rutledge was the special teams analyst in 2020. He was in charge of coordinating the special teams without being a full-time assistant coach. It didn't go well. Nebraska's special teams last year were awful, and Rutledge didn't have a lot of authority on the field. But what the Action Network report says is that Rutledge was instructing players during practice on the field, and that's a no-no according to NCAA rules. Now let's be clear about something here. There's a lot of college football programs that use analysts, okay? And there's not necessarily a lot of eyeballs in practice, and so you don't always know how the analysts are being used. Alabama, for example, has had former head coaches as analysts. Do we really think that they weren't doing anything at all? I'm not saying Alabama was doing anything, but there's so many programs that use analysts that it's not that surprising that somebody might have said something to a player during practice. However, according to the Action Network report, they have video footage of Rutledge doing this, and if the NCAA has that, then they're probably going to say it was impermissible. Nebraska is cooperating either way. They're moving forward. Scott Frost said it's not going to be a distraction. He says the team is laser focused on Illinois. Well, they better be, because that's not going to be a game that Nebraska is just going to be able to waltz in and win easily. There was also part of the report that we can sort of corroborate with the World-Herald that the Nebraska-Oklahoma thing was sort of Frost, that Frost was the guy that considered wanting to move that Oklahoma game. And Scott Frost said today that he never made one phone call in regards to the schedule, but he didn't like the way the schedule set up when the Illinois game was canceled. Well, I'm sorry, when the week 0 game was moved. So there was going to be a situation where they were going to have an open date between the Illinois game that was going to be in Ireland and the Buffalo game. Once that game moved from Ireland to Illinois on August 28th, there was really no need to have a buffer week, right? Because they weren't going to be traveling back from the Emerald Isle. And so there was no jet lag that was going to be in place or anything like that. And so they wanted to put a game in place, and Frost says that they've figured out the schedule and they didn't want to move the Oklahoma game. I think that's going to be one of those debatable things for a long time. Bill Moose told us back in the spring that he didn't want to move it and that he strongly advised Frost not to move it. So it was a messy situation back in the spring. Moose isn't here anymore. He's retired and back on the ranch. Scott Frost is here, and his team's got a game in 10 days. And this is just another thing that you put on top of all the other things that have gone on in this program since he returned, the biggest of which is a 12-20 record. Football stuff today, yeah, they did talk about it a little bit. I mean, Matt Lubick said that they've kind of figured out who their top running back's going to be, but they don't want to tell us. The receivers are coming along. On the offensive line, it sounds like Brant Banks has worked quite a bit at left tackle in lieu of Kerner Corcoran, who's been banged up in camp. Wouldn't surprise me if Banks starts at left tackle at Illinois. So those are sort of the football updates, but hey, we're getting late in the game here. We're 10 days out. It's going to be game week really soon, and the updates about what this team's progress is going to be is going to shift over into what is this team's record after August 28th. The Huskers hope that it's 1-0. If it isn't, trouble. We'll see what happens. All right, Husker fans, I'm Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald and Omaha.com. Thanks.